let's roll. Well, I'll start with Carole Kane. Marvin and Samel first. And Azia, Dinea, and Hale. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story with us. You mentioned at the beginning, Marvin, that this is based on a true story. You didn't even change the names. You kept it all really from the original stories. Is that how close is this to reality?
Too close. Yeah, all the names are the same. I wasn't as smart as Steven Spielberg is and changed the names. And Marvin had just sold his cigar company. I did. Netta just gave birth to the girls. It should have been the happiest time of our lives. And a month after the birth of my daughters, my mother, Phyllis Samel, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And to cope, I started telling the stories that I would tell as a cigar maker at events all over the country, all over the world. And I just started writing all the stories, the vignettes that you see here. But they were just vignettes. They were just the stories of the plumber and the painter. Yes, it happened. The only difference is her name was Mrs. Finkelstein, not Mrs. Green. And it happened all the way up until we met by accident at a Ben & Jerry's at a mall in Aventura, Florida. I had these stories, didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then one day, I came off of a plane and I called my dad. And all I could hear was, I'm like, Dad, all right, I'm coming to get you, and we're getting an iPhone. And we went to the mall, and I got him a phone, and he's looking at it, and he goes, what is this? Where are the buttons? And the opening of the film is what happened. And I ended up getting him the iPhone, and he ended up taking lessons. And he was taking lessons that were like private lessons. And then you graduate to intro to iPhone. They said, 2 lessons will be enough. 2 months later, my dad's clocking 6 lessons a week. I'm like, what's going on here? So I sneak up on him, and he's holding court with 3 or 4 of these young kids at the Apple store, at the Genius Bar, who he's calling the Einsteins. And he's telling them stories that make him laugh and make him cry. And I said, this is it. This is the vehicle to create a film. And the rest is history.
We'll get back to more of this in a moment, but I want to bring these 2 fantastic actresses into the conversation as well. I want to hear from both of you how you came to be a part of this family. Carole, can we start with you?
Is this okay? Well, I got a script sent to me through my genius manager Brian Lehman and my agent Don Burge, who are both here. And Marvin wrote the script about his family, and I loved my character, and my friend Judd was going to play my husband, and just seemed like, yeah, I want to do this.
And of course, missing a few actors here, but fantastic cast in general. Azia, how do you get involved?
I was given the opportunity through my agency, who had heard from the casting directors on the film, Avi and Liba, who I'm very insanely grateful for. I got the email from my agency, did a self-tape with my mom, because I'm in Los Angeles. I sent it in, and it got into the hands of Marvin and the producer, Dahlia. I got a phone call about 3 months later. I just assumed that I didn't get it, and then I got the phone call that Dahlia wanted to meet with me. So me and her did a lunch together, and then I got on FaceTime with Marvin. We did some scenes together over FaceTime, and yeah, they believed in me and gave me the biggest role that I've been able to do so far. So I'm very grateful to that, and as Marvin said, the rest was history after that.
And let me ask you both also your inspiration. I mean, you're playing very specific characters there. What inspired you? How did you choose your tone for your character?
For me, I just, was thanks to Marvin and I had film and photographs of Fela, and I studied her and, hoped to do my best to honor her and be true to her. That's it for me.
Well, if I can add to that, Carole, anyone who's had the pleasure of getting to know Carole Kane knows that she's an emotional tuning fork. And when we first met, she saw it was a month after the passing of my mother. We met a few blocks away from here at a bakery. And with Brian Liebman and my executive producer, Alan Bain, and she took me off to the side at some point. She saw I was in pain. And I actually wrote something in the script because of her. She said, "Take my hand." And she started talking to me about, as she called her, my mommy. And she asked questions. And at that point, she gave me a homework assignment. She said, "I want you to watch a movie. I'm going to do everything I can to honor your mom. And I want you to watch this film. It's a John Cassavetes film called A Woman Under the Influence with Gina Rowlands and Peter Falk." And I was not prepared for this film, 1971, I believe. And the realism in which Gina Rowlands portrayed her mental illness. When I called her back, she said, "This is how we honor your mom, by staying to the core, staying to the truth." And I had told her that my mother's illness, and everyone, I guess, goes through a different type of illness. One minute she was fine, and the next minute she's wandering the mall by herself or in a housecoat in the middle of the night on Biscayne Boulevard. And that's how Carole chose to portray the tone of the film. And I am forever honored in the way you portrayed my mom through this difficult time. This was my healing process right here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
We're always trying to figure out some healing processes here. I should just tell them all to make movies, right? That's the way to do it. Bring them to their shrink. Azia, I want to turn the question a little bit for you. And actually, you mentioned this was your biggest role, and you're working here with these legends. Honestly,
Yeah.
how did you choose your voice there while working with this really fantastic cast?
Well, I have to say that they made it incredibly easy. I mean, I think, of course, going into it, I knew that the stakes were really high, and I was a little bit intimidated, but it ended up being the greatest experience of my life. I mean, the moment that I landed in Miami and met with them the next day, we had a table read, all of us. I got to meet Sean and Judd and Carole, the entire cast and crew, and from day one, they were incredibly welcoming to me. Always, I never felt less than them in any way. It was very much an arms open, a very loving relationship from the very beginning. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I want to give an opportunity for the audience to ask a few questions. Marvin, you're telling the story, and it's a personal story.
Yeah.
Why is it important for you to tell the story to an audience? Why is it important for you to bring it out there? Film is not a private art; it's a public art.
Wish I knew that 8 years ago. No, I'm kidding. I used to volunteer down in Florida at a Holocaust survivors gathering meetings, and I would meet all these incredible people, and some of them unfortunately never left the camps or never left leaving, escaping. My father was very different. He went through tremendous suffering. My mother did as well. They both did. I mean, they would get into arguments in front of me over who suffered more, and I'd have to be the referee. But I felt like there was not enough told to the world through film of how survivors lived after the war, how they, as, the character of Ida Brown said it, it's not just to survive and grieve, but to bless this life we lived in and to dance. Now, my father didn't dance so much, but he danced with his mouth. He is a natural comedian to this day. And I wanted that tone to come out to the world that, you know what? We're still here, we're still surviving, and we're still prospering through comedy. That's how I wanted to tell why I wanted to tell this story.
Thank you. We'd love to take any questions from the audience, comments from the audience. I'll ask, so you mentioned also watching videos, and you have that little clip at the end, which is fantastic, of your father and how Judd Hirsch is actually doing, basically impersonating him. Was there a lot of that on set? Like, you have to do it, this is how you do it. How did that interaction go when these characters are all based on real people? All three of you. Should we let Azia start this one?
So my character is actually one of the only fictional characters in the film. So I didn't get to have that experience, but it was very interesting to watch Carole and Judd and Sean absorb, because Mordecai was with us every single day on set. So it was really
every
interesting.
day.
Yeah. So it was very interesting for me to observe them absorbing it all and then putting it right on screen. I mean, Judd especially, because I could meet Mordecai and I'm around him so much, it's uncanny how much, and Sean as well, and from what I hear, Carole as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, from my standpoint, my dad, first of all, my dad and Judd had not met before filming, and we had what is called a table read a few days before we started filming. And I posed it as a question to Judd. I said, hey, Judd, do you mind if would you like to meet my father? He goes, no, I don't want to meet your father. I have a very clear way of how I want to portray this character. And I'm thinking, my dad's going to be on set every day. So I kind of ignored Judd in this case. And I said, Dad, come on over. And 20 minutes later, he barges in the door, and he meets Carole for the first time, and Azia and Sean and everyone. And he looks at Judd, and he goes, you, I want to meet you. And he grabs Judd, and they go into another room in the house. My producer, Dahlia Heyman, is grabbing me by the shirt collar, like, don't go over there. But I was like, he's going to jinx the movie right here. And my dad's telling some sort of story. To this day, I have no idea what. And the door's a little open, and all of a sudden, Judd starts laughing. And the two of them walk in, arm in arm, and that's what happened. My dad was on set. He made origami flowers for Carole almost every day. He actually, and it was surreal. My dad would be yelling at me on one side of the set, and Judd would be yelling me in character on the other side of the set.
Carole, how did you work with this family? How were you able to manage the directing of a whole family?
I'm sorry.
The whole family there, having Mordecai himself on set.
Oh, it was wonderful to have Mordecai there because he was very supportive, and well, he was funny, he was open, he has more energy than any 10 people I've ever met, so his spirit was very uplifting, and for me specifically, he really thought or said, correct me if I'm wrong, that he really felt he saw a fella in me, and that was everything I needed.
He got a little confused. I thought he wanted to marry you or something. I don't know.
Well, he like I say, he gave me that affirmation that he saw her in me, and that was the most important thing I could hear.
Fantastic. We'll try for questions once again from the audience. We have a shy audience tonight. This must not be at the Jewish Community
That's
Center.
okay.
We got a question up there.
Marvin, two questions. First, did you have a background as a director in addition to being a cigar manufacturer? And also, how old is your father?
So the first question is, this is my diary. I was a cigar maker. I had zero experience in film. When I tell you the very first time I ever directed or I was ever on a set was me directing Carole, Sean, and Judd in the Jeep scene. That was our first scene together, okay? And I had zero experience. In fact, I was the least experienced person on the entire set. But you know what? I'm very, very lucky that I had the support of an incredible team led by producer Dahlia Heyman, executive and Dahlia Heyman introduced me to executive producer Alan Bain. And there's still, what's crazy is I don't know this to this day that usually producers leave. Executive producer, they're still here. It's 5 years later. And it's become a family affair. And they brought the script to Avi Kaufman and Liba Zakharov, who I can't believe they believed in me to lend their reputation to bring the script to Carole, Judd, Sean, Stephanie, and Azia, because now that I'm looking at it years later, there's so many pitfalls in making a film. This could have went sideways 1,000,000 times over. So I'm very fortunate to have had people who supported me. I had zero experience, but I do feel after this experience that I was put on this earth to be a storyteller, and hopefully if people come to see this film, maybe there'll be another story someday in another film. So, thank you. He did tell Judd on set, and he still tells him to this day, you're a good actor because you're playing a younger man. My father's a year younger than Judd. Judd's about to turn 88, and my father will be 87 in July.
And Judd, of course, is now nominated for an Academy Award for The Fabelmans. The most important thing, folks, is to tell everyone you know that this is opening in theaters this weekend.
At the Quad, right?
At the Quad Cinema. We're going to have another screening here at the JCC on the 6th, on March 6th, which happens to be Purim, which is perfect for a film called iMordecai. For those who can make that connection. If you can't, ask the person sitting next to you. I want to thank all of you for joining us and being here and bringing this story to us.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you.
Upstairs in the lobby, there's a reception, so please join us for that and continue enjoying the evening.
And I do have some people I want to thank.